Welcome to Animal Yak TV. In this episode I'll be covering a few good mates spending a weekend camping, kayaking and fishing. Let's have a look. So the first morning saw some rough conditions. It was blowing over 10 knots out of the southeast. The swell was quite choppy, a bit bumpy out there. Although, as you can see in the video, it was pretty easy launching. Just picking a little timing window and heading straight out of the dry bum, basically. So after launching, setting up on the outside, I'd set up one of my rods, an overhead rod and reel, with a dead bait, and I used a mackerel, slimy mackerel, which has proven quite successful in the season for Spanish mackerel. So that was one of the fish I was targeting. The other, I set up a hard body with no wire trace, in the hope of maybe a long-tailed tuna, or sometimes you can get mackerel smacking those hard bodies as well. And that was the start of the first morning. Usually that first run from Spanish mackerel is pretty fast, which it was, but as soon as I took up the rod and started putting a bit of pressure on the rod, I could feel that this wasn't an ordinary Spanish mackerel, and in fact I was a bit unsure at one point if it was a Spanish mackerel due to the way it was fighting constantly. Generally, when you have a Spanish mackerel hooked up in the mouth, when you put a bit of pressure on the fish, it'll have one or two runs up ahead or in front, but straight after that, with a bit of pressure, you can pull it towards yourself, and the Spanish mackerel kind of gives in fairly easily. But this was not the case. This fish was pulling quite hard. It was quite difficult actually reeling it in, so I thought perhaps it was really quite a sizable Spanish mackerel. But after reeling it in it wouldn't have taken more than 10 minutes overall, but I got it to the side of the kayak, and I could see that the hard body actually was hooked up on the top dorsal area of the fish. And I put so much pressure on the fish with my 30-pound braid on the spinning rod that the hard body actually was pulling through the flesh, and I think if I put a bit more pressure on it, perhaps it could have pulled out. So I was quite lucky to actually land this fish. Just have a look at the sequence here. I've done a bit of a zoom in, and you can see how the hard body has torn into the flesh. So gaffed the fish, got it on board pretty quickly, and started setting up in the hope of a next fish. Day 2 showed a lot of promise. No wind, very little swell, and beautiful conditions on the water. There was a lot of promise for fish in the water. The water temperature was 19 degrees and warmed up a little but during the day to 21. But a little bit of a concern for such cold water. Anyway, I spent the morning trolling around, not catching anything, switched from dead baits to starting to catch live baits, as you can see here. And after catching 4 or 5 yakkers, put that into the live bait well. I hooked up one of the live baits on my overhead rig and had that around in the water for probably 2 hours without any success, but had a great day on the water. And I guess the highlight for me of the day was the surf launch and then the beaching, as you can see in the next sequence. Well, hope you enjoy.